Welcome to Transformation Heroes by Feedier, a series dedicated to CX professionals.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Transformation Heroes. I'm Carlos, joined by François. Hello, François.
Hello, Carlos. Good to be back.
Great to see you as always. So today we are talking about something I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time. There's a lot to talk about. It's customer intelligence. So I think we should just dive right in. Before we go into the customer intelligence side, let's maybe have a moment to think about how businesses interact traditionally. So there's a term called the intelligence layer. And so I'd love to maybe kind of explore what that means in a business context. What does it mean to have an intelligence layer? And then kind of go from there and talk about how customer intelligence kind of evolves and develops from that.
Yeah, I think we can start with the why it matters at the beginning before jumping into the technical terms and everything. At the very beginning of the story, you have that idea that every single business needs to transform and adapt because markets are changing, environments is changing, like everything is changing. So you need to be able to be ahead of these changes. And one way to do it in a very successful way, and I think most of our listeners will know that, is by putting the customer first and making sure that their interest remains a top priority. And what's very interesting is there is a role in that organization, the customer experience role, where it's their job to actually make sure that they understand very well what the customers are saying, the intensity when there is a problem of that problem, but also like goes through to the action plan, to making sure like there is actually action that happen. And it's not the CX team that are going to make this action most of the times, but they have to be the one capturing that information, making sure it's intelligent, and then turning that intelligence into something that is actually actionable from other teams.
I want to ask a very simple question. Why is it important? Why is it important to understand what customers are saying? Why can't we do what we were doing for the last 20 years?
Again, because because everything is changing and businesses are way faster or easier to change. Like some pretty big businesses are pretty hard to change, but it's still like they have a massive impact on, like the society, on the economy, like on everything, like on a social impact. Like you take a company with like 10,000 employees, that's 10,000 jobs, that's a massive CO2 impact as well on the world. And if you want these businesses to change, to transform, you need to capture what people are saying and you need to turn that into intelligence that you can use and that you can leverage to align your customers' interests, which are changing, with your business interests, and also, of course, keeping your employees in the loop, obviously. But that's kind of like the ground, the start, which is, again, like businesses are the greatest platform for change. How do you make businesses transform faster? Go one level down, you arrive to the CX people, that's a job. And then that's exactly where you have voice of customer or like traditional voice of customer, which have been around since we had CRM. That's where the first voice of customer system emerged. And now with AI, there is room for new.
Okay. And if we were to maybe talk about the challenges that companies face, because obviously, you mentioned voice of customer as a tool that's been traditionally used. What are the challenges that we're facing now to try and transform that approach? Are there any specific ones that
So a lot of the voice of customer workload is pretty manual. Like you have to track your different topics. You have to track when something is wrong, like what's the impact. You have to do reports. You have to do dashboarding. Like it's a lot of manual work for someone to do. And again, it's very easy to do when you're running a 10 people company, when you're running a 50 people company. When you have 10,000 employees, it's very complicated to understand exactly what's broken, to identify the impact, so to quantify that impact, and then to make sure that you have the right people in the organization to be aware of this before it has any financial impact on your customers, again, life. So it's pretty important. And at the end of the day, what companies have been doing a lot is no longer scalable. So traditional voice of customer, where you just have a bunch of surveys, then you have a couple of KPIs, you have your NPS, and then when a customer is unhappy, you're going to contact him back. Well, the thing is, that doesn't work anymore simply because you have like so many sources of voice of customers. Like you have your e-reputation, you have your tickets, you have your social networks. Like all of that information contains signals about what's broken, about what you can do to improve. And if you're a 5 people 5 people team, CX team, like it's pretty tough to analyze millions of records and then quantify the impact and then turn that into actionable plans.
Yeah, and I mean, when you say it like that, from a CX perspective, that sounds kind of scary. The fact that we have multiple different metrics to use, we are using potentially outdated methods through the voice of customer. So I think it'd be great to kind of lead on to what we could maybe do, which is customer intelligence, which kind of gives you a more defined and refined way of being able to manage your client data.
Why? Because it's very important to transform. It's very important to change. It won't happen by itself, and you need people to take the lead. It doesn't have to have the CX hats, but it has to, again, you can do customer experience when you're running a product organization that also work, or a customer support organization. But basically, people that are looking to improve and transform, a lot of it is about intelligence. It's about not intelligence in the AI intelligence, artificial, but in the way of I've got to make decisions for my teams. I've got to identify things, and these tasks are manual. And that's where you have to go back to why we need an intelligence layer, is because we have a couple of systems already in the business. We have a system of records, which is basically that idea that, okay, you make a transaction, that transaction is being stored in a system such as a CRM, such as an ERP system. This already exists. And most companies today, they've invested millions and millions into not one CRM, but usually multiple CRMs, one CRM per country, one CRM. It's very long programs, a lot of money is invested there.
Right.
But what that gives you at the end of the day is a lot of records. What you sell, that you can forecast this very well. You can forecast how much you're going to sell, but you can't really forecast what's broken. You can't really forecast what's coming next from your customer experience. And you can't really forecast where you should focus all your improvements, because this is not you won't find that just in the business record. You will find that in the voice of the customer record. And that's where you have another type of systems. You have the engagement system, which is you interact with your customers all the time. And you might have your marketing tool. You might have your surveys that you send. You might have SMS. You have different ways on the stores as well.
Chat support as well.
Yeah, you have throughout all your customer journeys, you have different ways to engage with them. Yeah. And at the end, this data ends up somehow in a system, right? And so you have both of these systems, but now you have something that is pretty amazing. It's called AI, and that helps you turn business objectives with these records plus the voice of customer, which is a lot of unstructured data, which is not really in a system of engagement, which is not really necessarily in a business system, but it's all around. And you want to take all of that information and to create a layer where you can ask questions, where you can get recommendations based on not only the different engagement that you have with your customers, but also the link with the business records, because then you can prioritize better, then you can make better decisions, and also you can empower your teams by getting the right pain points to quantify the business impact of these pain points. And the way we like to frame it is, having a lot of different analysts working for you, basically. And if you think about it, consultants are intelligence that you buy on the time rate. And that's what an intelligence layer is. It's just you do it with technology.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we define customer intelligence as a way of analyzing customer data to uncover behaviors, preferences, needs, enhancing decision-making in order to drive customer satisfaction, build loyalty, business success in the end. Would you say that kind of covers?
Yeah, and that's very clear. And at the end of the day, it's not just about the voice of customers. How do you align it with your business objectives, keeping in mind that every single business is going to be transformed in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
There are going to be more crises. They're going to we had a few in the but that's still going to happen. It's if someone says that geopolitically speaking, it's going to die. It's not going to move for the next 10 years. Unlikely, right? So it's going to change. And that's a fact. And the businesses and the organizations that are going to thrive are the one that can adapt. And one way to adapt is to have an intelligence layer, because it's a way to know what's broken before it has any financial impact.
Yeah. And so the idea is the intelligence layer kind of sits in between where you are as the company and your system of record, system of engagement, where you have kind of connection to the client.
So you already have these two pretty connected. Now you're saying I have all of that structured information. I also have unstructured information. So example, social networks and so on. You have all of this textual data. And then you use AI as, again, it's not this simple. Obviously you have security, you have data governance. It's not just hey, I store everything in ChatGPT. That doesn't work that way. But you have role-based access. You have the idea of agents, of specific workload being automated for you. So it's pretty Like it's a pretty horizontal workload, I would say. But at the end of the day, it's you're using what you already have and you're using AI to make very, very precise recommendation and not replace anyone, but empower your teams with the right intelligence.
Yeah. I think we talked through some of what I wanted to cover in terms of, the risks of neglecting, in terms of how we can seamlessly fit the intelligence layer into what businesses are already doing. I think we're missing is just a real world, like contextual view of how that might work. So if you could maybe walk me through from having the raw feedback come through all the way to having an actionable strategy.
Yeah, sure. Let's say you're a retail chain, okay, and you have like let's take a medium one, like you have like 20 to 50 stores. Your system of records is basically whenever you make a sale, this is logged somewhere, and you have a customer relationship management system, your CRM, where you know your customers, you have loyalty program, and so on. And then you interact a lot, you engage a lot with your clients. When they go in the shop and they pay for your product, you will make a connection between this in your like their action and your system of record. And then you're going to engage with them social network, you're going to engage with them with like NPS survey at the end of the shop, like you're going to engage with them with like marketing campaign for their birthday. You're going to do all of this. And companies have been doing that for a long time. I mean, like 10 to 20 years, okay? Well, where the customer intelligence layer or the intelligence layer makes the difference is basically you're going to say, I have these interactions, I have this business data, these records. How do I make sure now that when I have a stock problem or I have a problem with the quality of one of my products, I don't have to wait for my business to be like, hey, we're no longer selling this product. Like, how do you manage what your customers are saying, that you link it to the business data, and then that you have an insight, something that is very much tailored to your needs and that you can act on. So let's give you let's give you an example. Like the feedback can be, let's say, a Trustpilot or Google review, right? You take that Google review of someone saying like, I've waited for 20 minutes in that shop, and at the end I was looking for that product and it was no longer there. That's the third time I'm getting in the shop to get this product. It's no longer there. And at the end of the day, this is not match. That insight doesn't exist in your system of records. It exists in your system of engagements. And you have to link the reviewer name with the profile in the CRM. You then have to handle like anonymization and make sure like it's compliant with GDPR like and all regulations. And then you have to identify very precisely in the organization who's in charge of that product and what is the business impact of not having that product as well. And so you need to make the connection between what a lot of unstructured data, it can come from a social network, from a review and so on. And then you got to link it with that business data. And then you need to have a system that can format this information, format this insight to deliver it to the right person with intelligence. And what we mean by intelligence is you have the impact, you know the frustration level. So for example, the impact on your net promoter score of having this product missing, the impact of the balance sheets. And then you can turn that into something that is an action, and you can then prioritize it.
Yeah, and that ties in with a lot of other things that you can do as well. So you can also, start measuring topics. You can have topic generation. So if you have that particular item being mentioned multiple times, that could create its own topic and point of view.
I have another one that's interesting as well.
Yeah.
I like the public transport ones as well. I've got a couple of use cases like this. Public transport has massive impact on everyone's life. When you're living in a city, like your public transport, they impact pretty much everyone. It's very interesting when you can correlate the usage so that you have in your system of records with what people are leaving on Google reviews, what people are leaving on the yearly surveys, like what people are leaving on the QR code in the buses and so on. And when you can make the connection of like the missing stops, when you can make connection of the missing services, when you can make the connection of like when you create a new service or when you update the app that's used by thousands of people on a daily basis, like how long does it take your organization to figure out that it's not going in the right direction, that you're missing something, that it's that they are using Google Map instead of your app because the UI is better? Like these kind of insights are extremely valuable, and it's very hard to do if you don't have something again to detect like signals to manage all of that unstructured voice of the customer.
I think the other issue there as well is, that could be very restricted to a certain department. So the customer support side might have that inclination that there's an issue with, for example, the latest app update. But by the time it reaches product and even just the engineers, it might be months down the line. It might be at your quarterly review where you find out that that's an issue.
And again, like that's what's very interesting. And it might sound like you're doing very like not interesting, like boring work, but like making sure that you break silos with this insight. And because like the way it's done in most organizations today is you're going to have the product organization that's going to listen to the app store reviews, and then you're going to have the customer support that's going to listen to the CSAT on their support channel. And again, it's a specific system of records, specific system of engagements. There are different systems. And then you're going to have on the marketing side, they're going to go on the surveys that they send for their offers. And then you're going to have the communication team that's going to look at the reviews online. And the thing is, a lot of it can be linked together and you can break a lot of silos. And that creates, then it also create an asset for the company. Like this layer also adds tremendous amount of value to the company on the long term, because you have an history of what's broken. You have an history of what your customers need. You don't have to do third-party research on a yearly basis. You can capitalize on the investment you've already made and create an asset which puts the customers at the very core of that asset.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we haven't really talked about as well is it gives you maybe a competitor's, like an advantage over a competitor, because as you mentioned, a lot of companies are transitioning. We say a lot, they're really in the beginning processes of getting there. Companies that start now are going to have a visible advantage over ones that start, in 5 years' time, for example.
And there is another point to this. You're leveraging your data, you're leveraging technology, and you're creating an asset as a non-tech company that tech companies had for a very long time. Like, again, you take Netflix, you take Google, like their asset is basically the data they have on us, right? And they do provide value on this. And at the end of the day, like the point is, if you leverage it correctly, like what your customers are saying is the best assets. It's one of the best assets at the very least, because you have so much in there, and you have people that are taking the time to say what's broken, to say what they need. If you just listen to the feedback, you're never going to take like very bold shots and so on. But at the end of the day, when you talk a large organization, there's a lot of improvements to be made. And there's a lot of transformation. Like we talked about like a retail store, but now let's talk about airports. Let's talk about like logistic companies that are going to have to update their fleet in the next couple of years, and that are going to have to roll out like new business models and so on. And you have plenty of examples. And then there is another part of that, which is you need also to have your employees to have meaning in their work, to have transparency in terms of how the customers are feeling, to have access to that intelligence, and to know where we are excellent, where we are bad, but also to have action plans which are generated again through that intelligence layer. That's very powerful, because it gives also a lot of meaning to people which are tweeting for your organization.
Yeah, and I think this really applies for like medium to large size companies, because generally speaking, if you're that size, you already have market fit to some extent. You're able to be successful enough to have a wide customer base. So there is less of an issue of, if I listen to my feedback, I might pivot into the wrong direction, because they already got a strong customer base, meaning that if they listen to their feedback and grow from that, they should be able to retain further.
I think there is retention, but there's also like transformation as a point. Like usually when it comes to B2C, at least, and I think it's also true for B2B, consumers move pretty fast and habits can change. And again, like if you look at the banking industry, for example, it's very interesting. Like you see the growth curve from Revolut, like that's pretty impressive. Like it's a pretty red market, like a lot of banks. The size of the market that has been captured by a new player, you want other banks to be able to compete and to have that kind of services, but they're not going to get it on the first shot. So they need the product team to know what the customer support team are saying. And it's very hard when you are a 25 or 40,000 people organization.
Absolutely. And I mean, to take Revolut, I think Wise is another example. They were companies that were willing to adapt and listen to the customer base and evolve. And from the start, you could see the difference between a traditional bank versus an online bank. You could see how they were more customer experience focused. Okay, so what I would love to kind of explore a little is, we talked about customer intelligence, where we are right now. I'd love to talk about where we might be next year. I don't want to date too much this episode, but we're coming up to the end of 2024. So I'd love to talk about, how do you think the customer intelligence landscape will change in 2025? Because we talk about customer satisfaction, we've talked about how it can give a competitive advantage, but what sort of other benefits do you have that you would like to share?
I think at the end of the day, what's very interesting about if you zoom in to the CX workflow, you want to transform organization, like there are a couple of steps that every single person with that job will have to do. You have to listen to what your customers are saying. You have to do connection with your business data or your system of records. You have to figure out what's broken, where are the opportunities. So that includes analyzing a lot of basically unstructured customer feedback with the right connection with your system of records. Then you need to be able to have action plans that are generated. And then you need to have reports that you can share so you can convince people within the organization that this is a direction that we should go. And all of that process, I think it's going to be drastically changed in the future, because so far, the centralization piece, a lot of businesses already do that. And it's not all businesses, but the most advanced businesses, they already centralize like all of that. AI isn't going to change all of that because it's basically API connections. So that's not where it's going to make the right difference. When it comes to understanding what's broken, the best the model will become in the future, the best the insight level or the precision level is going to be, because simply like having a lot of textual feedback, lots of business data, and then having very like performance LLMs, large language model, is going to, like, the more these models increase, the best the insight quality will be. And we can already see that, like between like on the Feedier side, like we've started with GPT 2.1 Mistral, but every single model change and model update, we are getting a level of quality that was not there before.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a big thing. Same for the action plan. Like what we are very much looking forward to is the ability to leverage AI to identify and quantify the impact of every single action. If you have a system of records, a system of engagement, whenever you're making an action plan, and you generate an action plan with AI, like can you identify very precisely the context of what's the action that you're going to take? And sometimes it's going to get it wrong. So you also need a system that was wrong. Like you should not give me that insight again. And then the last one is going to be about, in my opinion, about like how do you automate all the PowerPoint process, which is a lot of work right now. And again, like Microsoft's doing it its way. On the feature side, we have one process that we improve, the one I've just described. So I think it's going to be massively improved in the future. And I'm very much looking forward to it. So that's the workflow. But I think at the end of the day, like what's coming next, and what I mean next is basically next year, is when you've done all of that workflow and that it's properly segmented and improved with AI, there's also a lot of it can be automated with agents, where you can say, hey, I want to improve this product. Like I want to do the full process. You listen to guys that are saying that the customers that are talking about this product, you enrich with the right data, you identify what's broken, what's not broken. You make me an action plan, and if that action plan is good, like you create a report that you send to me every single week. And I think like that's where we're going to see the future of our business and our industry as a whole is going to be massively, and it's going to be very good for the customers because they're going to be able to achieve a lot more. And CX team, whatever the company size, usually you're not talking about like 200 people departments, except if they are very, very large organizations, like even 10,000 people companies, they're going to have like 3, 4, 5 to 10 CX people, right? Now, I'm not talking customer support. I'm talking like really like customer experience, about like identifying what's wrong throughout the customer journey, making recommendations, and convincing people on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of reporting. A lot of reporting. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that you've mentioned there is being able to tie it to real world numbers. So whether that's revenue, whether that's number of tickets, whatever it might be, but being able to connect the issue and put it through that intelligence layer so you can say, okay, in real terms, these are the numbers that are changing. This is how we can improve and adapt. And I think the last thing there to kind of touch on in terms of the major improvement is on the reporting side. Like you mentioned, I think it's going to be really interesting to cut through having to create PowerPoints, but first you need to create an Excel sheet, but first you need to have that from a CSV file. You know, removing that whole section, because we, as you mentioned, the centralization process has got very good when it comes to putting that all together. However, when it comes to presenting that information outward, there is definitely room for improvement. And thanks to AI,
and also there is a difference between like making one report that you're going to share to your board and making like 50 reports every week. The workload is not the same. Exactly. And a lot is very repetitive. And what's interesting also with like AI I mean, large language model by definition are non-deterministic. So you don't know the outcome. It's always going to be different. But the good news in the intelligence layer and the customer intelligence idea is, like the input is always different because the voice of the customer is also going to change every single day. You're going to get new inputs. And so it's okay to have different output as well, because that's fine. Like, you're going to always have new customers. Like the business record is also going to be different a day after another. So that's completely fine. And that's why, like, it makes it very, 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 like, exciting for the future, because it's going to change a lot of what a lot of businesses are doing, and it will make them, it will help them transform a lot faster.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a big red flag if you're seeing your data be stagnant or static. If things are showing as issues and they're continuing as issues, then
but at least you have no excuses, right? You know it.
Great. Well, that's all I wanted to talk through today. Is there anything you would like to add? I haven't added.
No, thanks, Carlos. Very, very good chat.
Lovely. See you in the next one, François.
See you in the next one, Carlos. Bye-bye.
Bye.